Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of Duffington Talks. And this is going to be a tad different because I was initially going to talk about the local elections and the sort of tide turning, but I've decided not to really focus on that. We're just going to talk about Coronation protest mess that's happening and well, a bit of free speech in general. I will just, give my 2 cents in the coronation in the local elections, and say that um, I do feel like this is a sign that people are fed up of the Conservatives, and obviously we're still a good couple of years off a general election, but I don't see the Conservatives winning the next general election. I think that it's fair to say that the Conservatives are essentially running the country into the ground, and I think that that's interesting. That interestingly brings us on to the next point, the main thrust of this podcast, which I intend to be a shorter one, and it focuses on the coronation and arrests. Stats differ, um, which is interesting. We've got about apparently 52 people arrested. I think we had it was the number was in the 40s. The number was in the 40s. I think on the actual day of the coronation, and basically people were arrested for conspiracy to cause public nuisance, possessing articles to cause criminal damage, breaching the peace, a whole number of things. The organisers were arrested early on of the Republican movement. You also had people of Just Stop Oil, including 2 journalists, arrested. And then some campaigners were arrested towards the evening. They were campaigning for the night safety, and they were arrested because they were in possession of rape alarms, which the police had received intelligence. That's what they've said. That they received intelligence that these alarms were going to be used to cause disruption. I mean, this is at night at that point, so after I think a lot of there was revelry going on, but after the thrust of the sort of events had taken place. I mean, these people were essentially targeted. They were targeted as groups. So if you had a sort of like yellow "Not My King" placard, and you were on the Mall, for example, I think that where 17 or 18 Republican protesters were arrested on the Mall. You had Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested pretty much everywhere for just wearing the Just Stop Oil t-shirts. I mean, there's long form videos on Twitter, so this is this is just me reacting to the circumstance that I've seen, but it certainly seems like they were targeted arrests, and it obviously bears the question that it's essentially the narrative that gets created from this is that people are arresting, the police are acting, in the interest of the Conservatives, or the monarchy, for arresting people, basically any form of dissidence. People are saying it's like fascism, for arresting anyone that disagrees with your opinion. And I then saw, I mean, the social media backlash that these groups get. It's like the comments are 50-50, and obviously this is like echo chamber of support and hate. But I think that I'll get into that in a second, where I think that, some of the issues lie, because I feel that this is slightly multifaceted, because then a lot of people on the right pointed out that a Catholic woman, Isabel Vaughan Spruce, was arrested on the 7th of March 2023 for praying outside an abortion clinic. Basically, in the video, she's just got her head down. She's praying silently, and she's arrested because that is also in that's against the law, according to the law that was made in 2022, the recent one. I've just read it, but I've lost what I was reading. So the Conservative bill that came in to stop people protesting also makes that against the law, because the abortion clinic is in a protected zone, so you can't protest outside of an abortion clinic. As the public order bill, that's what it's called. So the abortion clinic is a protected zone, so you're not allowed to protest against it because it's to ensure that people can have an abortion in peace. To ensure that these people aren't harassed going into that's what was stated. I mean, it's fair. I think that you can protest it. I think the whole point is, the argument is that they're not banning the right to protest having an abortion. They're banning the right to protest outside of that area. That's what the specific defense is. Although, so that's the theory. This Catholic person that was praying, Ms. Vaughan Spruce, was arrested in February, I believe, or January, and actually the charges were dropped. And that's the same thing we see with many of the Republican protesters and the Just Abroad protesters, is that a lot of them don't end up going to prison. And I cannot find any statistic on how many go to prison because nobody's doing the numbers. It's a lot of wordplay and not much fact. And what I mean by that is, and this is where I'll get into the the nitty gritty, my rant, is that people are saying, obviously, first things first is that why people are getting arrested for protesting, and then people are invoking the right to free speech. Well, the cruel truth, and it goes into the sort of modern discourse. Obviously, people in these campaigners, they say, "Oh yeah, you have a right to protest, you have a right to free speech." Obviously, it's not obvious actually. It's obvious to me, but free speech does not exist. The concept does not exist. You have a right to do things within the reason of what the societal consensus allows you to do. And what I mean by that is that and this is obviously, I'm using a straw man example, but for very deliberate purposes. If I went down to the city centre of where I lived and made a placard that denied the Holocaust, in theory, I think denying the Holocaust is against the law in the UK. I think that would be classified as hate speech anyway. So you have so technically I have a right to protest, but there are certain topics that are obviously that then get negated. So there is there's a superiority of what you can protest about, if that makes sense. So you have the right to protest, but then you can't protest about everything, because if it's hate crime to protest against it, you can't protest against it. So that's the first thing, is that we have these general rights that and people, and also the right to free speech, is that you don't free speech again is it's consensus. These things are abstract ideas. People say the right to protest, the right to free speech, as in it's just objectively you can say what you want, or you can protest when you want, how you want. And the law is obviously very ambiguous about slow marching. I've seen Just Abroad people slow marching, and it's fine, and then there was two of them that climbed a bridge and they got arrested because they were climbing the bridge, where the rest of them weren't arrested because they were slow marching across the bridge. And the Just Abroad Twitter admin said, oh, they were just slow marching, but the two that were arrested climbed a bridge. So, the difference between climbing a bridge and slow marching across a bridge, one, I guess, the interpretation and they're not, it's not real things. This is a bit the wrong thing to say. They're not gospel. They're set in stone. I mean, even the laws and what's right and what's wrong is not set in stone. It is a matter of consensus. And this gets onto the issue with the people being arrested for the coronation is that we have no healthy discourse. We had a series of large-scale peaceful protest, sort of around summer 2020, 2021 with the Black Lives Matter campaign. Some of that obviously was technically, and this is superiority of like which law is superior, is that at times that must have been those those demonstrations must have been in breach of the pandemic laws. But again, you're not going to all get arrested for pandemic laws. Like that didn't happen. So that protesting was okay. And again, it was anti-government. It's a specific number of protests, and there were arrests made. I mean, I think the people that were protesting were fine, and the people that toppled the Colston statue in Bristol, they were arrested and they went to court. And then on the evening of one of the peaceful protests, there was essentially a riot where people were burning police cars, and there were arrests made there, for example. Or that may have been a year later. I may be conflating events because it's just off the top of my head. So we have, a tricky recent history there, and I tried to look up figures for the demonstrations of the Iraq War because there was a massive anti-war protest in London in 2003 where the police said that there were 750,000 people, 750,000 to a million, and I couldn't find any arrest statistics for that. I don't know if people were arrested or that was okay, and that's interesting because again it's a very divisive thing, but I guess it was a march protest. Was it better? And this is the thing, the questions that I want to start posing to people smarter than myself. Were these things better organized? Were these things, because I wouldn't say the Iraq War was any less divisive than the fact that we have a monarchy, or the fact, or the debate on climate change. I'd say they're pretty almost fit. I'd say that they're quite 50-50 debates, although many people have claimed I think I've seen a lot of articles, some of the American ones, NBC said that, oh yeah, well, a lot of the polls show that the majority of the country is apathetic, and it's like, yeah, that towards the coronation, it's like, yeah, that may be true. There may be a lot of sort of national apathy, but all the people going to London, if you're going to London and you're putting yourself in that position, you're clearly not apathetic. You're either for or against. So, pardon me. We have this, stark contrast of people there. So people either directly agree or directly disagree. So is the issue that because of the polarization, not just of opinion, but of discourse, they're worried that something's going to kick off the level of, again, sort of, and we sort of saw that with the Black Lives Matter protests, where people were arrested and people started defending statues. They started forming squares around statues to defend them, and there was all of that protesting and counter-protesting. So, is that a reason? Because the thing that I'm not seeing is I'm not seeing reasons. I'm seeing a lot of this is fascistic, suppression of free speech. Again, what does that mean? What are we saying here? So it's fascistic because people are being arrested. 50 people were arrested, but there was a protest that did take place on Trafalgar Square, that it was allowed to take place, and it was televised. So when the King was going from going to Buckingham Palace, even. They were all on the route of Trafalgar Square, and Sky News, that I was watching the Sky News broadcast, and Sky News pointed the camera at, well, there were more people there, and again, I've seen no figures of people that attended, so this is me doing some sort of mental math on the image. There were way more people there than were arrested. And again, this is not me justifying any arrests. I'm simply trying to ask the questions. Simply trying to ascertain, because I don't, people go, oh yeah, good job. So, and I'm very scattered because obviously this is scattered in itself. But what happens is that so they protested. They were allowed to protest. Some people were arrested, and then what happens is these things go onto social media, and then they get support and backlash. And this is what I mean by the issue with our discourse is that you've got, I don't know, 1,000 comments on a tweet put out by the Republican group or Just Up Oil, and half of them will Just Up Oil is worse because Just Up Oil get 75% hate than they do 25% positive. But again, you can't see that as not taking anything away. It's anecdotal. But then you have a lot of people saying, "Oh, good job you were arrested," or "Glad you were arrested." The public opinion towards the people protesting in the first place is not is nowhere near the level of, I guess, people may have been for or against, say, the Iraq War, because I think Black Lives Matter was very polarized, and it sort of gets to the modern period of polarization. But the Stop War campaign, for example, for the Iraqi War, may have been very sort of not agreed upon, but there wasn't that stark hatred, and so this is towards the group, and this is where I start sort of not asking the questions, but we're going to start sort of laying down the facts. So the thing that has changed, and I think massively my cause, because my cause for a lot of the current discourse issues we have is social media, and that includes YouTube. So first off, we have an over-reliance on short-form information. We have an over-reliance on a YouTuber telling us something where the YouTuber is, or the people are not engaging with the other side. They're not actually, they're engaging with the idea of the other side of what they're talking about. So I mean, Just Up Oil and the people against Just Up Oil do this all the time. Just Up Oil use like binary rhetoric. Is that you're either with us or you're against us. Really horrible. Like, and I hate that. And then you get the same thing with people being woke on from the right. Then the people call people on the right are saying, oh, they're just a load of wokies, and these are just stark binaries that are really unhelpful because they don't get you anywhere. They just entrench disagreement, which is great. It's horrible. Like, it just gets you nowhere. So we have that as a major issue. Then also we have Twitter and the ability to reach a wide audience. Echo chambers, another side effect of social media, so that people follow the news that they want to follow. And this is what I mean by I see a lot of words and not a lot of stats. I mean, I've seen how many people are arrested. I think the majority of them, from what I've seen, were released. I've seen about half of them, any with active social media presence. The half of the people that I've seen have been released, at least. And this is not a total figure. This is just I've seen half of them be released. I don't know about any of the others. There's no people running the numbers on these things. Then even the journalism is the Guardian. I think the Guardian article says 40 people were arrested. So the Guardian says that article doesn't want to load. So we had 25 anti-monarchy activists and other protesters. 25 anti-monarchy, 19 environmental. This is from NBC in America. You had 20 members were claimed by Just Stop Oil, so that's slightly above the numbers that we saw from the NBC page, and that's from Sky. The Guardian article, one Guardian article doesn't give any stuff. Guardian article says 52 arrests were made. There's enough one. The BBC article says 40 were made on the day. No, that's the Guardian article. Sorry. So we have a wide range of numbers. Statistics of that. The only breakdown of statistics we actually have, I've highlighted it here, is from BBC. So a breakdown provided later revealed that 32, so that's 60%, were arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to cause public nuisance. Or the 13 Just Stop All protesters of the roughly 20 arrested were arrested on the Mall. I think some of the others were arrested basically near Trafalgar Square at all. One of the videos taking place near Trafalgar Square. So interesting that we have the sort of basically no statistics. I mean, that's the only statistic I found. And is that me? I mean, I'm looking at Twitter. There's no statistics on Twitter for me. For one, it's more word-based updates, and a lot of the news articles are pretty much word-based. Even I can't speak. No wonder why they're not word-based, because people can't speak. So what's the point of dealing with statistics? Oh dear. Yeah. So 60% arrested on conspiracy to cause public nuisance. We could tie this in, and the next thing to tie it into is the manner of protesting, and what I mean by that is not that they were protesting in any unseemly manner, but we had people, for example, throwing eggs at the king, and is there an inherent fear then from the police that someone else is going to do that and throw eggs at the carriage? And the police, some people that were arrested on the Mall, it's on the Twitter, the police are telling them that their actions are going to scare the horses, for example. So that's supposedly, again, well, that's what the police are saying, is that are they preempting these people doing something? Like, they preempting these people going to run in front of the procession? Is that what they're doing? Again, you can't arrest someone for preempting a crime. That's wrong. You have to arrest someone for committing a crime. You can't. That's the sort of totalitarian aspect of this element. Is there is an element of totalitarianism, and I will define that. There is an element of arresting someone before a crime is committed, and that's from my interpretation. And I will give, the totalitarian aspect is that essentially we're arresting people for the fact that they have the ability to commit a crime, which obviously sounds very weird, but and this is again why people say, oh, it's fascistic. They don't say why. I mean, it's fascistic because states that want absolute control don't want to give you the ability to commit a crime. So they don't want people to have the ability to protest or do something obscene that will then hit the media. So they'd rather look a bit heavy-handed and a bit totalitarian than let people actually protest, which is because the powers that be, and this is not even the monarchy, the government, because obviously the government brought in these laws. The powers that be actually in government don't care, because they'd rather the police look heavy-handed than ever having to do anything about real genuine protest, because they don't want to fight people on actual opinions. They just want the other side to shut up. And this is what I mean by the reaction of both people, is that it's like saying that you're glad someone was arrested. I don't agree with the Republicans, for example. I don't agree with Just Stop All. Like I said, I'm highly critical of their approach to things. But being happy that someone is arrested, which a lot of the people that are pro-monarchy now are, because we're getting more and more polarised, is just a sign of the issue in the first place. It's a sign of complete divide, complete dichotomy. We're at a point where people are just happy. There's no concern on either side. The concern should be, again, for getting arrested for or you're in a position where we know that you're in with this group, and the treatment of like arresting people because they identify with a group is that should only really be done, from my understanding, is that obviously if they're in a certain area that they shouldn't be. So, for example, if you're football fans and you're straying into an area where they think there's going to be a fight, that they move them on, they don't arrest them. But then terrorists. So, are we saying that Just Stop Oil and the Republican movement they're being treated the same as terrorists, where they're getting arrested on the spot for the identification of being in that group, which is totalitarian again, because the designation of, I mean, they're not terrorists obviously, but the designation of political againstness, political the adversarial nature of politics. I got there in the end. The adversarial nature of politics is sort of inherently meaning that if you're not with us, you're against us, and therefore we can arrest you. And the arrests aren't long term. These people aren't getting put in prison again. So that strikes me as that it's just a simple. They want to get rid of them in that circumstance, in that situation. These people aren't going to prison, so it's not like they don't seem to actually be committing a crime. Even the person praying outside of the abortion clinic, which, by my understanding of the actual law, is actually a crime, because I mean, the silent prayer it's technically a form of protest, isn't it? I mean, I know it's not a protest, but you're praying for their souls, I guess, which they will disagree with you, so therefore they will see it as a form of protest, which I think is fine, to establish that as a form of as a form of silent protest. So that person was definitely in breach of that law, but was not arrested. So the clearest example that I can give you today, of someone actually breaking, I mean, the law in itself is wrong, but this Ms. Vaughan Spruce definitely broke the public order laws, because she was told to move on. She was within 150 meters of the abortion clinic, in breach of the public order bill, in the buffer zone, had been arrested for it previously, but they don't go to prison, so they're not actually really committing a crime, because being arrested or being detained for committing a crime is different from being sent to prison. And there's another thing as well: how many Just Stop Oil people are going to prison, and what are they going to prison for? Are these people being arrested because the police want to get rid of them momentarily and then releasing them on investigation and then dropping charges? Which is what it seems to me. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people get arrested. I'm seeing people get taken to prison for. I mean, it was like some of these people were held for like 8, 10, 16 hours. So then they're released either the day after or on the evening of the coronation. And then I'm seeing these people go to prison, and then I'm seeing charges get dropped. Obviously, for the coronation, it's too early to see charges get dropped. But for other events where I've seen these people protest, that sort of thing happens. Again, would love some discourse on this, some facts, some stats, the conversion rate of arrest to prison, because I think that is important. Again, I'm saying that arresting the people is wrong, but then we have to get the mentality. Are they just arresting them to move them on? You should be allowed to protest. That's not what I'm not saying you shouldn't be. And you shouldn't be happy that anyone is getting arrested, because then one day there's something that you want to protest. Oh wait, you can't, because you were laughing at all of those people getting arrested. Oh, now the joke is on you. That's a discourse issue. The discourse in this country is down the toilet, so that's an issue in itself. But is that the aim? Is that the end goal? It's just, we don't want these people because we want to let the crowd of tourists in, so we want to move as many of these people on, and we don't want to have to over police this, so we just arrest them. Is it easier to arrest someone than it is to have them protest? Another consideration. All things that basically I don't think I alone can solve it. Obviously, these are all opinions of mine, but I'm in a pretty neutral position. So, just as a summary conclusion, with my own opinion, I I'm not a, I'm I don't like just stop. I mean, I've said that before. I don't like the Republican movement. Because I don't like the idea of having an elected head of state. Because if Boris Johnson, I mean, even Labour, Tony Blair was head of state, I would just hate that personally. I like having the monarch as a head of state because I like knowing the evil that is there, and I think that with all of the dodgy stuff that's come out with Boris Johnson and all of the dodgy stuff that happened with Tony Blair, so Boris Johnson obviously having party donors pay for his refurbishment because he doesn't know how to spend his money, and Tony Blair and the Labour's cash for peerages. Like I think that there is. It's not corruption. It is forms of corruption. That people pay that money talks, especially in this country and in the politics of this country. So I don't see that getting rid of the monarchy, because I've seen people obviously saying the monarchy have influence in politics. The monarchy um, have more power than any unelected person should, which I understand, acknowledge, and I agree with people that are unelected shouldn't have power. But my very cynical approach to it is they do. Obviously, then people would say, well, if you get rid of someone that has power, you're going to stop that power. If you abolish the monarchy, you do not abolish the wealth that these people have. So again, that's a whole another conversation. It's just sort of my precursory thoughts to that. So that's my approach to that. And the second thing is that I then, on the other hand, am not against them protesting because I am pro consensus. And what I mean by that is that, and I the whole understanding of consensus is that to achieve consensus, you have to have a form of discourse that isn't just polling, because I think that just polling people is not good. And what I mean by that is that we have polls on everything. We live in a very sort of we understand a lot of societal mentality thanks to polling, and that's what a lot of polling comes out and say people more apathetic. But polling can gather a large group of society, and we have actively in the country a middle ground of people that are uninvolved and not actively um, engaging with these issues, in politics, in the news, on social media. However, one thing that I think that admonishes, I think is the right word, or that absolves, is that it absolves then the radicalization of two extremes, the right and the left, and they are front and center on social media and in some extent in the news and to another extent on TV. The issues that get talked about the most are actually the most radical issues because the centre does not have a voice, and you technically have a silent majority of people, for example, a silent majority of people that are apathetic towards the coronation, a silent majority the migration or the channel crossing, for example. It's 50-50. It was like 51-49 on people crossing the channel, but 19% thought it was a serious electoral issue. So 20% of people, I've rounded up there, obviously, so 90% of people, I don't know why I did that mentally in my brain, 19% of people, and these could be, I think I rounded up because it was 10% on it. If you have 10% of the extremes arguing over something, and then you've got the majority, the other 81% of the country, have an opinion but don't think it's an important issue, and yet that the migration bill dominates the discourse, that then saying, oh yeah, but we've got the poll that says it's only 19% of people care about it being an electoral issue, therefore we can move past that. It's still dominating the discourse. So we clearly have discourse issues where the extreme issues are disproportionately represented, and it's not even that we've got a vocal minority on issues. We have a vocal minority on the topics being talked about in the first place, and because people have opinions on, I would say people have opinions on everything. People obviously have people are reading more and more thanks to the internet, the power of the internet, the power of being able to Google something, and the power of social media is that more and more people are using social media. So then, if the majority of the people, even you have people on social media having opinions at loggerhead, so if 51-49 was the percent of the country, migration is and channel crossing is one that sticks to my mind because it's a very good statistic for this case. Is that, well, then even if you have 60% of the country looking at the discourse on social media, they're still not going to think it's important because they know that in other areas of their life there are more important issues. So, for example, the cost of living, politics. I'm not actually sure what the most important issues are currently. It may be, I'd say, cost of living, gas bills will be certainly some of them. You know what? I'm actually going to go have a look. So, as of the 1st of May 2023, from a YouGov poll, the primary things are the economy and health. Actually, asylum and immigration has gone up. It sort of is. The YouGov poll says it's 34% asylum and immigration. That 34% say it's the most important issue. So I think 19% said it was the top 5 issue. That was an Ipsos poll, I think, a couple of months ago. So, of the current statistics, the most important issue is the economy. The second, a lot of low level issues. But yeah, really broad number of issues that don't matter, or not don't matter, that matter relatively lower. Crime is at 19%. So economy and health, the two driving force issues. And that, I think, is something that is quite interesting, because how often do we see? I mean, there are a lot of people, like if you follow Politics Joe, for example, heavily critical of, and there's a lot of strikes going on. Sorry, Politics Joe. To finish that point, they're a good source of more representative things for the economy, but to what extent is that represented in the discourse? I don't think it is. Really don't think it is. The health, for example, and health and the economy sort of tie together with the current strikes that we're seeing, because the health is in discourse, but it's in the discourse on it's in the discourse of the strikes. So it's through a lens already, and just looking at some of the other polls is like UK, just some of these polls are crazy, and I feel like these polls highlight the sort of things that I'm talking about. Obviously, my asylum and migration statistics were massively incorrect, but I know it's quite a 50-50 issue, and it's the third most important issue in the country, and it's very disproportionately talked about in terms of the story. So how much do we actually have on the economy? How much talk do we have on the economy? Not too much. I mean, like the coronation, for example. I mean, it wasn't on there on the poll because I guess it said the monarchy. The actual talks on the monarchy, I guess, I mean, they come into all these really vague umbrella terms like the economy and health, but quite vague umbrella terms. But they are what are important at the moment. So is that um, is that indicative of, again, failed discourse? And wow, that was a really tangential exploration of the sort of way that discourse is failing. And but again, I link it back to the way that these protests are handled, because people also the government threatened to, or they took strikers to court, and they're threatening um, railway strikers. So whole deal of things, a whole deal of issues. Anyway, I just tried to ask the questions, answer them in the comments, answer them, come and talk to me. Would love to hear from everyone. As always, I've been Duffington Media. Have a good one, and I hope to see you in the next episode.